Hey friends, it's Walter here with a second video for the Love from Lizzie design team using the November Festive Tales kit. Today I'm going to be creating 3 Christmas tree ornaments, a card, and a bookmark. Let's get started. Creating these ornaments is a lot of fun. I'm using these round wooden circles from a craft store, but if you don't have these, you can always use a circle die and cut a shape out of chipboard or even use some extra heavy cardstock as your base. To decorate, I'll be using some of the background paper as well as some other elements from the kit. I used my Dremel tool to go ahead and drill a hole at the top so that I can put ribbon or string or any kind of even a hole for a hook to go through in order to hang it. Once I have one placed, I use the first one that was drilled as a template and drill through the second and third. If you're using cardstock instead of using a Dremel tool, you can use a paper punch to create your hole. If you don't have a Dremel tool, you could also ask your husband or significant other if they have a drill that could be used. Once drilled, I adjust the tip of my Dremel tool and I put on a sanding bit so that I can go in and grind away the inside to make it a little bit wider, as well as to get rid of any kind of uneven parts that may have been created by the drill piece. I then flip the wood around and run the sander against the back to make sure that there's no little stray slivers of wood coming off of the back. Cleaning up each one really takes no time at all. Just goes right through it, sands it away, and gets rid of any of those little extra bits. Next, I use my wreath die from Love from Lizzie and some of the green cardstock and cut out a wreath that I'm going to use on one of the ornaments. I'm going to use Mod Podge to go ahead and get the ornament stuck down onto the paper that I will use as the background. I also keep a jar of water close by so that I can put my brush into the water and prevent it from getting all stuck and gooey in between uses. I make sure to have enough on to ensure that there's going to be a nice seal to get the paper stuck down. Once finished putting it on, I turn the ornament over and stick it down onto the paper. I make sure to add some pressure using my hands just to make sure that there's a nice tight seal between the ornament and the paper. I then take a pair of scissors and trim away the excess paper. I find it easier to do this after it's adhered because you have your scissors going against the circle and you get a really nice close cut. It's easier than using a die cut to cut out the paper and then just, make sure that the circle's the correct size. Once done, I use a poke tool to go ahead and create the opening on the paper where the hole was drilled. And you can just use that tool to press the paper inside. And since it's still kind of wet, the glue will hold it in there. I then take a gold metallic marker and just color on the sides where it wasn't quite enough, the paper wasn't quite wide enough to cover up the whole front. I knew that was going to be the case, but I really wanted to use that scrap of paper. So I thought that using the gold metallic pin would be a great idea. And then I also decided to run it along the outside of the ornament as just another little detail. I then apply a second coat of Mod Podge, and this time it's to the top of the paper. And this not only makes sure that it's going to stay secured down, but it also just adds a nice protective coating and gives it a nice little bit of a gloss. If you use the matte Mod Podge, you won't get that same gloss effect, but I really like the glossy look, and that's why I use that particular one. A gold gel pen is used to go around the wreath and color in the flowers and a couple of the little sprouts just to make them stand out a bit more. I think that, it also ties in the gold that's on the base of the ornament and really just makes that wreath look extra special. Some craft glue is put onto the back of the wreath. I make sure that there's good coverage around the center area of the wreath and the outer parts of the wreath so that I know it will adhere down onto the ornament and stay adhered. And then I decide on the best position for it. And the nice thing is having the glue on there, you have some time and some wiggle room to make sure that you're really happy with how it looks. And once happy, I use my hands to firmly press it down and hold it in place to let it dry a bit. Double-sided foam tape strips will put onto the back of the piece of ephemera that I'm going to have in the center of the wreath. And I also add a little bit of craft glue onto the foam strips just to give that extra protection to keep it stuck down. You don't need a ton of it, but I find that just a little bit will help keep it in place even better than just the strips alone. And I then take that really cute mouse that's reading in bed and place him into the center of the wreath. I glue one of the little white bows to the bottom of the wreath. I then use my poke tool to guide a piece of the green ribbon from the kit through the hole of the ornament. And tie a bow. Isn't it cute? I start my second ornament by applying the coating of the Mod Podge onto the front of it. Again, being pretty liberal, but making sure that there's not too much going on there. And then I press it down onto the paper. Make sure that your paper is facing down and not facing up because you want that printed side on the front of your paper. It's then time for a little bit of cutting around the edges to trim it up. And once again, time to use the poke tool to create the hole at the top of the ornament. I do my second coating of Mod Podge on the top of the ornament. I put double-sided foam tape strips on the back of the really pretty bookstore piece of ephemera, added some craft glue onto the strips, and then pressed it down into place on the ornament. I really love this combination of the bookstore against those books and greenery in the back. It's just so pretty. I then put a thin strip of craft glue at the top of the bookstore building. I place one of the plastic Christmas light gems that came in the kit all along that strip of glue. That way, it looks like there are some Christmas lights at the top of the building. I think it's a really fun and festive touch. And a tip is to make sure that you use a wax-tipped jewel pick to put those gems in place. It'll make it so much easier and quicker and will work so much better than tweezers would. I then place a little dab of glue at the top right of the bookstore and the bottom left of the bookstore. And I adhere down a set of the clear and gold bell ephemera that came in the kit. I think it's a nice little touch and just makes it even that much more festive. I selected one of the sentiment stamps that was about books and reading that I thought would be really appropriate, inked it up, and stamped it into place under the bookstore. A touch with shimmer was added to the bookstore ephemera using a shimmer pin. I thought that it would help brighten it and just make it stand out a little bit more. I really think it looks great. Look at the shimmer that's added by that. I think it's great. And I also love the way that the light looks as it bounces off of the clear bells and as well as the Christmas lights at the top of the building. And it's finished. I began my third ornament by laying down that base coat of Mod Podge over the front and then pressing it down onto the paper. And I used my scissors to go ahead and fussy cut around the ornament. I created my hole using the poke tool and then add that top coat of Mod Podge to the ornament. Don't be afraid to use your fingers to wipe off any excess. I placed double-sided foam tape strips onto the back of my snow globe ephemera. Add a little craft glue, and then adhere it down onto the ornament. Next, I once again use my shimmer pen and come into the inside of the snow globe area and add that shimmer into where the glass is, covering all over to really give it that little bit of glimmer. And then it's time to use some Love from Lizzie peel-offs. I'm using the Silver Star peel-offs, and I am adding some stars around the outside of the snow globe, but then I'm also going ahead and adding some onto the inside. I'm taking various sizes, placing them down, and then deciding where I want the next ones to go. For the inside of the snow globe, I'm going to use the smallest of the stars and have them kind of up in the air to make it look like the snow globe has just been shook and the stars are settling down. Look at how those stars just add so much when the light hits them. This time I used a piece of twine from my stash and used my poke tool to push it through to the other side of the ornament. And I then tied it and created a nice hanger. I tie a knot at the top and it's done. I think it's really pretty. This card uses an A2 craft top fold card base. I also cut a beautiful piece of the patterned paper, this one with lots of packages, down to 4 inches by 5.25. I'm then going to glue these beautiful metal corners into place on each edge of the sheet of paper. I put some glue onto the front corner and the back corner of the paper. Take the metal corner piece, put it into place, and I also give it a little bit of a squeeze just to make sure that it's on there. I then took a piece of the metallic red peel-off strip and placed it down onto the card panel on the left side between the metal corners at the top and the bottom. I thought that this would be a fun way to add a pop of color, a little bit of shimmer, and also just to add a border around the card panel. I used a ruler as a guide just to make sure that I was aligning both sides. And I then took a green metallic strip and placed a piece of it in between the top left and top right corners and did the same thing at the bottom. I placed a dot of craft glue at the top center of the card panel just under that peel off strip and also on the left center and the right center sides of the card panel. And the purpose of this is to adhere down some of the red and green gems from the kit. I put some double-sided foam tape strips onto the back of the stacked books and gift piece of ephemera and adhered it onto the card. I then put a strip of craft glue at the top of the package on that piece, added some double-sided foam tape strips to the back of my owl ephemera, but I only went from the top from the top to the middle because I'm going to put the bottom of the owl ephemera and glue it into place on top of the package. Doesn't he look adorable sitting at the top of that stack with his book? I then added some double-sided foam tape strips to the back of my card panel. I decided that I wanted some additional dimension and not have the panel just simply glued down to the card base. And then I placed the card panel right down into the center of my card base. Give a firm press to make sure that it's stuck down there, and the card is done. I think it's just adorable. Last up is making a bookmark with some of my leftover scraps of paper. These particular scraps are 2 inches wide by 6 inches long. So I go ahead and put some double-sided adhesive tape onto the back of my patterned paper so that I can adhere it down onto the piece of cardstock. You could alternately use craft glue, or you could use a combination of both the double-sided tape and some craft glue to really ensure that it will stick down there. I always go around the outside edges when I'm using double-sided adhesive tape to make sure that it's not sticking out from the back and that it's adhered onto the backing of the piece that I'm going to stick down. And then just line it up and press it down into place. I then lay some of the green peel-off strips onto the side of the bookmark, and once in place, I cut it and then repeat the same on each of the other 3 sides of the bookmark. I use my hole punch to cut a hole at the top. You can do this or you can skip it. And if you don't have a hole punch, you can always use a paper piercing tool and create a hole that way. There are some really cute paper clips in the shape of a book in the kit this month. And I put one down onto the top of my bookmark along with one of the tassels, the green tassels that are in the kit, just to act as another ornamental piece on the bookmark. And I then thread the green snowflake ribbon that came in the kit through the hole and pull it through. And I'm going to tie this so that it just adds like a decorative tassel at the top of the bookmark. I put some glue onto the back of my really cute bear ephemera and then adhere him down onto place in the bookmark. I'm putting him about a third of the way down from the top and just a little bit of pressure to make sure that he's stuck down there. I add some dots of craft glue to be able to hold some of these green gems in place, and then stick the gems down. I then put a few more drops of glue down and adhere some more of these really fun colored lights down around the bear. These just add a little bit of festive flair as well as a pop of color. And just like that, our bookmark is complete. To recap, here are the projects that I made in this video. We made the 3 ornaments. I think they're really cute, and I would certainly put them onto my Christmas tree. I'm actually going to be giving them away to family members as part of their Christmas gifts. I like to add in a homemade piece just to make sure that they know I'm thinking of them. We then have our Christmas card that is really adorable and a lot of fun. And then last, our bookmark. Thanks so much for spending the time here with me today as I created these projects. I hope they help give you some inspiration and give you some extra ideas on what you can do with your kit from Love from Lizzie. I'll see you again soon.